Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing on this fine Friday Eve? I hope you're doing well. Got back out there this morning, got on the running trail. Hadn't been a while, but as you can see, standing on business here this morning. Shout out Deandra Sydney um, and her highly intentional brand. Loving this hoodie. The comfort. I slipped out of what I had on to run in and into this, and I instantly felt 1,000% better. It's just nice whenever you slide into like a quality piece that feels good against the skin to just change your whole outlook on life. But I hope everybody had a great night's sleep. Like I said, got back into the running game this morning. I had taken some time off. I feel like gotten a little bit lazy, and it happens. But I think it's important to make sure that you never let your past dictate your future, right? So you never let yesterday's wins and losses dictate what you have going on today. See, it looks like I froze for a second. Okay, nice. It can hurt getting back into things. I definitely thought I was about to, cough up blood. It was cold outside. I could see my own breath. It was beneath freezing, and I hadn't ran in a while. And I cranked out a few miles, and I got back and was just standing up because if I sat down, I thought I'd never be able to stand again. But we're here, push through, and I just wanted to share that because you guys know, like I try and be open with you about what I have going on. It's not like anybody's perfect. It's not like I'm waking up and I'm crushing it each and every morning. But just because you have a few off ones doesn't mean that you can't get back on track, right? And really put your best foot forward and close the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So I'm happy that I got back out there. Hopefully, some of you are inspired here this morning. Maybe do something you haven't done in a while, get back on the horse. And it doesn't have to be the morning either. You've got the whole day, right? So a lot of people say, oh man, I messed up my morning. I've got no chance for this day. It's absolutely not true. You've got tons of time, tons of opportunity in order to, get back on track and do something that you've wanted to do, something productive, something to make you feel like you can close your eyes at night and feel good about yourself, right? So there is never not time, right? There's always time for you to execute. And I'm glad that we're here this morning to do exactly that, right? Close that gap between where we are, where we want to be. And that happens one step at a time, right? 20 minutes at a time, one to-do list check off at a time, right? Nobody's perfect. Everybody only has one life, and we're trying to figure out how to make the most of it. So I just feel like that requires more empathy, more people being genuine, and more. There's a lot going on that you'll never see from other people, but you just got to show love and everybody push forward together, right? So that's what we're looking to do here today, this morning. We're looking to work, continue to push, continue to stand on business, right? I love this on the sleeve. It says, don't fold. That's the vibe right now. That's the vibe today. Do not fold against all odds. I'm not folding. Throw a 2 in the chat if you're not folding today, despite what, your boss may have sent you, despite what, a customer, may have backed out, despite, maybe your kid got in trouble at school, despite all of that, right? Don't fold. We push forward, we stand on business, and we keep grinding. So I'm excited to go ahead and get into what we have going on today. Make sure you dropping a 1 in the chat, right? Signifying your intention to get 1% better by the end of this session. And we'll dive into what we have going on. So let me make sure. Yes, we got the newsletter for today. Awesome. Our top news, probably not what you think it's going to be. The rising sun. It took over 34 years, but trading floors across Tokyo today erupted in cheers and applause at the end of the market session. The Nikkei 225, Japan's main stock index, closed at a new all-time high above 39,000, following a record run last seen during the country's late 1980s asset bubble. In fact, the Nikkei has been the world's best performing major index in 2024, surging 17.5% only 2 months into the year and trouncing the impressive 5% advance of the S&P 500. So why so hot? There are several factors at play, with many seeing a new era for the Japanese market. A falling yen and the fading promise of China have lured foreign investors like Berkshire's Warren Buffett and boosted earnings of heavyweight exporters. Additional bright spots have been the corporate governance changes that have sent stock buybacks soaring, while excessive cash balance sheets have declined, as well as strategic cross-holdings between conglomerates. It also comes amid optimism that Japan has finally escaped from the doldrums of deflation, which they've been struggling with for a long time, and big industry that has been pumping in investment from semiconductors to artificial intelligence. So you've got this AI bubble that's really fueling, or this AI frenzy, AI bonanza that's really fueling, enthusiasm all over the world. I can only imagine, how Taiwan is doing right now with semis being such a hot commodity. Quote, Japan is reemerging from its multi-decade long hibernation with multiple government initiatives that have held back share valuations starting to reverse course for both Japanese shares and the yen. Seeking Alpha analyst Dan Stringer wrote in December when determining the best idea for 2024. He recommended the iShares MSCI Japan ETF, whose ticker is EWJ, highlighting that it traded at a 15x multiple compared to 26x earnings multiple of the S&P 500. However, the quote biggest risk is that the government bodies start to lose confidence in the policy pivots for reasons that include wage inflation not taking hold like it is currently anticipated. Yeah, it's tough whenever you're investing in emerging markets and you're just not as familiar with their overall long-standing policy, right? This is the first time that Japan's market, the Nikkei 225, is hitting new all-time highs since the 80s. That is crazy. I mean, imagine the S&P not hitting new all-time highs like every 2 years, right? Like really every year, to be honest. Like other than when we have like a pandemic or something like that, for the most part, every year and a half we're hitting new all-time highs, which is just wild to think about that there are countries where that doesn't happen. But for all its faults, the USA, we do make things happen, right? We make things happen, and we've got a stock market that is fortunate enough to, kind of experience that luxury more often than not. Definitely a lot more often than since the 1980s. I wouldn't have even experienced a new all-time high being alive if I lived in Japan, which is just crazy to think about. Let's see here. Thought bubble. The record stock gains are taking place at a time when Japan is mired in a recession. Germany last week even ousted the country as the world's #3 economy per nominal GDP in dollar terms due to a weak yen and an aging population that is not being easily replaced. Yeah, that was something that we talked about here on the pre-market prep session, and something that can't be overlooked. There's actually a few different countries right now that are struggling with recession, which is pretty crazy to think about. Quote, thankfully, the economy is not necessarily the stock market, adds Stringer, referencing a common divergence that factors in monetary policy, stock ownership, and cash flows and forward-looking sentiment. Now, moving on to what I'm sure you all thought, and when it comes to foreign investment, right, I'm much more a proponent of just the good old American stock market. Again, there can be overnight policy changes that completely, just smack in the face your positions that you might have abroad, right? Talk about, China, Japan, etc. All these different places, laws can be put in place overnight, or political pivots can take place. They completely wipe away any technical reason or technical impetus as to why you placed a trade, which is not fun, right? And that's really why I'm not super big into foreign investment. So people are like, oh man, Japan is booming. Guess what? We're booming, and we're booming more often. So it's like you don't want to focus on everything you could be in. You want to focus on good quality opportunities, leveraging those, and then continuing to do that, right? And I feel like that's a good segue into what you probably thought was going to be our top story, which of course is NVIDIA crushing earnings, right? So number one, I feel like a lot of times people, will be like, hey, like, do you kind of asking about FOMO, like, hey, like SMCI, right? It's going crazy. Are you in it? No. Do you have any FOMO? No. Same thing. NVIDIA earnings, like, do you have NVIDIA calls? No. Like, do you have FOMO? No. Why? I can't be in everything that's going on in the market at once. It's impossible, right? You choose your battles, you have that conviction, and then you stick with it. And it's not that I thought NVIDIA was going to be bad. It's just that I personally don't play earnings very often, right? It's not a smart thing to continue to do, and it's not a viable ongoing strategy. NVIDIA, as of right now, is up probably 15%. It needed a 10% move in order to make money in either direction. It had only moved less than 10% until about early this morning, overnight. So even that initial move was not big enough to cash out on NVIDIA calls. It will be now that it's above 10%, right? But it had to move 15% in order to get that. And I don't feel comfortable for me or leading people in to be like, hey, if you want a few grand tossed on a lotto ticket, right, you can do it. No, right? I've got NVIDIA in the long-term portfolio. You all should too. And then you push forward and you accept those gains, right? You have gratitude for what is there. because you will never be in everything. So I want to preface all this right before everybody gets sick to their stomach saying, oh, no, I knew I should have got calls. No, you shouldn't have, because if you would have woke up this morning, right, and it didn't move enough, and you spent $3,500 on an NVIDIA call and it didn't work, you probably call out sick today, right? So it's one of those things where you can't be in everything. You're always missing something. So don't be mad over it, right? Don't be mad. Don't be sad. Don't have FOMO. Position it in your long-term portfolio so you know that this AI run is making you money regardless, and then you keep it pushing, right? You keep it pushing, and it is what it is. But I don't really freak out about earnings anymore. And there's sometimes when you hear me say, "Oh, maybe I wish I was in that," but like this isn't one of those times. This isn't one of those times because I have it in the long term, and with the short term, we were in a really really dicey spot. And there was just no reason in terms of for what I saw to risk it. Now, if you did and you made great money, that's awesome, right? That's awesome. But I think everybody's long-term portfolio is smiling this morning with NVIDIA continuing this run. And when it comes to whether or not it's a bubble, I think that there are companies that will pivot away from their dependence on NVIDIA. We already talked about how Microsoft is developing their own chip. Apple, Microsoft, these companies don't like being dependent on other companies. They'd rather create everything in-house, and they have the means to do so. So, do I think that NVIDIA will always be, the only dealer on the block when it comes to AI? No. But I think that they're doing what we all should do as humans within the workplace, and that's using this first mover advantage to get so far ahead and deposit yourself into other sectors so that you can't be removed, right? It's like the same thing if you work a job and you start learning how to use AI apps and AI programs. Now, suddenly, by the time AI would have taken your job if you were still in the same position, but you used AI to move two positions up, right? That's what NVIDIA is doing. NVIDIA bought a pharmaceutical company to produce AI research drugs, right? NVIDIA is not going to be the same company in a year, 2 years, where it's like, oh, we only made chips. No, we made chips while we were the only guy on the block that had chips like we had. We did that for 2 years. And in that 2 years, now we're in healthcare. Now we're in pharmaceuticals. Now we're in banking. Now we're in all of it, right? We're in software that you have to, use. They're developing their own models more likely than not, right? So they're using that thing to catapult themselves ahead and then diversify. And that's exactly, you want to take notes. It's one of the biggest things I've learned from studying markets for years and years and years, right? You want to take notes from what bigger companies are doing. NVIDIA is not just sitting there and saying, hey, everybody needs our chips. We're good. They're saying, hey, everybody needs our chips, but that's not going to remain the same way, right? And since I know that, I'm using this first mover advantage now to get far enough ahead to the point where I am not one of the people, right, that is left behind, because big tech's always going to do what's in its best interest. And it is in their best interest for all of these companies to start making their own chips. They've got the money, they've got the resources, they've got the infrastructure, right? They know that they're going to be beholden to this company, and this company is slowly but surely working its way to the most valuable company on the market, right? At this pace. So it's like you have to at some point, everybody's got to cross a line and be like, look, no, we're not letting this happen. But anyways, NVIDIA surged 9.1%. So again, not even 10%. I think it got higher than that. I don't know if it went back lower pre-market. If it's not higher than 10% buy open, IV crush is going to affect those contracts. It needs to, the implied move was 10.7%. So you need a move bigger than that to make money on those contracts, because those contracts were expensive enough to buy them that factored in a 10% move. So it surged to $735.94 a share after hours on Wednesday as the chip giant once again surpassed expectations with its Q4 results, with AI accounting for around 40% of its data center revenue last year. During NVIDIA's earnings call, executives detailed an exhaustive list of companies and industries embracing its generative AI, providing a never-ending deluge of demand. Quote, accelerated computing and generative AI have hit the tipping point, said CEO Jensen Huang. Wouldn't be surprised if he was on the cover of Time magazine this year. Quote, demand is surging worldwide across companies in nations. Auto, health, robotics, financial services, multi-billion-dollar industries are embracing our generative AI, right? So a lot of people are arguing, is it a bubble? It has to come down at some point. I'm going to get an entrance point. Don't worry about an entrance point for your long-term portfolio. Just worried about being in something, right? Be worried about being involved. And, even if it's as little as Robinhood has recurring investment that you could set up, you could buy $50 of NVIDIA a week, right? And then as time goes on, you look back because that's the only thing that ain't slowing down, right? Time. It continues each and every day. You do that, suddenly you look over, you're like, oh wow, I've got a good chunk of this stock. Like this is awesome, right? And then you can go about living your life. But just make sure that you don't succumb to the FOMO. You don't come out this morning, you're like, oh man, I gotta be in this, I gotta be in that, right? Understand that yes, this could be a bubble, but you can also make money during a bubble while a bubble is happening. So that doesn't mean that you like a lot of people don't trade it at all. They're like, it's got to come down. I refuse to like. Don't be one of those people that's like stuck in your own sentiment that you miss out on opportunities, right? Because you're angry at something or you are salty that something happened. I'm not salty at anything, man. Like it is what it is. The only thing you control is moving forward. Moving forward, what are you gonna do? Right? That's the only thing that you can control. There's no reason to beat yourself up about stuff that you cannot go back and change. Right? Otherwise, you will literally just be beating yourself up forever. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about when the bubble pops. Don't worry about this, that, and the third, right? Worry about continuing to put your money where it makes more money, right? And it doesn't always have to be where it makes maximum. You don't always have to be in calls for everything that goes up, from earnings or inputs every time something goes down, right? Market's been on shaky ground this whole week. It's not like we've been ripping puts nonstop this week. And this shows you exactly why, right? The market was waiting here on this report. We got this report, and now you got the NASDAQ and SPY that have pushed back up here heading into today. So we'll see, kind of what, especially the NASDAQ has for us because it lost its uptrend on the daily. So if this pushes us to retrace that uptrend loss, and then we hold beneath, could be an interesting case there to short the NASDAQ and short QQQ if it cannot get back above that area, right? So that'll be something that we're definitely on the lookout for here this morning. Now, in terms of economic news, cutting too soon. Most Federal Reserve policymakers highlighted the risk of moving too quickly to ease policy, according to minutes from the FOMC's January 30 to 31st meeting, with a minority feeling that keeping policy too restrictive could tip the economy into recession. There was no discussion on when rates might get cut, but policymakers noted the importance of monitoring data to see whether inflation continues to move toward the Fed's 2% goal. So literally nothing valuable coming out of that meeting. Perhaps more importantly, members agree that the federal funds rate is likely at its peak for this tightening cycle. So they're not going to raise rates anymore, which I think was fairly obvious as well. And the FOMC also discussed the process of reducing the size of the central bank's balance sheet. So kind of just a rundown of what we got yesterday at 2 p.m. We got FOMC minutes. We didn't get Powell, but we did get some market volatility. And then, all of that, we got some selling, and then all of that was just bought right back up. So this week, in terms of trading, it's just been a week littered full of landmines. The market is just baiting up, baiting down, reversing, right? Whichever one it baits first, it then reverses and gives you the other, right? And I wager to say that people probably knew something of NVIDIA's earnings if you look at how we behaved yesterday before close, because everything was down in the dumps. And then in that last like 15, 20 minutes, it was just buying, right? NASDAQ, S&P, all of it. It was just buying. So you guys know big money has the inside tips, and somebody was anticipating this gap up overnight. And, they made a nice little, nice little pretty penny off of it. I was just pulling up Thinkorswim to see where we are right now. Looks like at close yesterday, we were around, what is that, 673 on NVIDIA. Looks like we'll open up at roughly 752 if I'm generous. So 752 minus, what is that, 673 673 equals 79 divided by 673. There you go. So right at 11%, 11.7%. So again, just to quell anyone's feelings who's like, man, I missed out. Like, I'm struggling right now. They needed a 10% move to break even and make money, and it got a 11.7% move, right? So no need to be all up in arms about it. Plus, also, we've got that post-earning strategy that we can flex here on Nvidia as well to give us some nice trading opportunity. So we'll see what else the market has for us, but never ever ever get FOMO because of earnings. It's not worth it, and all it'll do is cost you money in the long run. Because then the next time earnings comes around, you're going to be saving up 20K to dump into it, and something bad happens, and now you've moved off to a desert land, never to be heard again. In terms of economic news, we talked about that. So energy, economies of scale. Was watching XOM yesterday, and we likely will have that breaking out today. I want to see where it is. Thought about it, but I was like, again, would rather be safe and see what the market does in reaction to NVIDIA earnings. Economies of scale, the oil and gas industry is set for more consolidation. Chord Energy, ticker CHRD, and Enter Plus, ticker ERF, have agreed to an $11 billion cash and stock merger, creating a Williston Basin-focused E&P company. The combined firm's Q4 production is expected to be 287,000 BOE per day. Maybe that's like barrels. I don't even know what that stands for. And oil would comprise about 56% of its output. Recall that Devon Energy, ticker DVN, had reportedly offered to buy Enter Plus, but the latest news sent shares of the latter soaring 9.6% after hours on Wednesday, while Chord rose 2.4%. Wall Street Breakfast also recently discussed the reasons behind growing M&A activity, assessing the rampant consolidation in the Permian Basin. There's been a lot of consolidation across the energy sector recently, like a lot of different energy companies buying other companies. Oh, nice. So ExxonMobil has that breakout at 104.88. We didn't rip through that overnight, so make sure you got an alert set there. 104.88 on ExxonMobil. Really nice daily bull flag, I believe it is. Let's see here. We close above that by end of day. ExxonMobil can really get those engines pumping and get us a nice little rip upward to 107.36 and then 110.51. So eyes on energy as well. There's a market full of different stocks, guys. So always make sure that you understand there's things that haven't yet broken out. There's things that aren't running. That's what you really want to focus your attention toward, right? Not the FOMO, not what you missed. Focus on the opportunities that are ahead, right? And then that way you're making sure that you are managing your risk correctly and not putting yourself in a compromising position, which is super key in markets, which are a land of eternal opportunity, right? There's opportunity in every direction. It's like going to a buffet. At a buffet, you don't cry because you didn't get to eat every single food at the buffet. You eat what you want. Once you're full, you move on, right? And if you're living life like the Japanese, like we should, right? They've got this, thing where they say stop eating when you're 80% full because, those impulses that go to your brain and tell us that we're full, like there's a lag time between our belly and our brain. So stop eating when you're 80% full. Same thing with trading. Stop trading when you're 80% full, and you'll be completely fine and live a nice, healthy life. In terms of today's market, it's looking like a sea of green, except ironically for a little bit of red with oil. Japan up 2.2%, Hong Kong up 1.5%, China up 1.3%, India up 0.7%, FTSE in London up 0.2%, Paris up 1.1%, Frankfurt up 1.4%, the Dow up 0.3%, S&P up 1.3%, Nasdaq up 2.1%, crude oil down 0.2%, gold up 0.2%, Bitcoin up 1.1%, back above 50K for Bitcoin, 51,653. Today's economic calendar. We got jobless claims at 8:30 a.m. Oh, yeah, this was the big day today. We got PMI composite flash at 9:45, existing home sales at 10. Yeah, we've got a lot of little random bits of information and data this morning that go on until like 10 to 10:30. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And then we've got a few members of the Fed to speak, but they all do after market hours. So we don't care. Let's see here. In terms of what else is happening, we'll finish up with our rapid fire stock news rundown. Boeing Aus 737 MAX leader names new quality control head. I hope they would, considering the fact that we had wings that were peeling off. There were like pieces of the wing peeling off on a flight like 2 days ago. You guys remember that? Crazy. And it was a Boeing plane. What the heck is going on? Like, yes, they need to oust their quality control head, their CEO, their COO, their CFO. Like, get somebody there that can put these planes together that don't literally fall apart in the air. iSports, Apple launches new free app for the iPhone. UAW, you guys remember we were talking about not recently, but probably a few months ago, that war for streaming services in sports that has been, obviously came to a peak this past year when you legit needed 10 different streaming apps to watch all the football games, which is still super annoying. I mean, I've got like probably 11 to watch all the sports, and it's crazy. But yeah, Apple, even, I could see Apple right now is already a bank. I could easily see Apple getting into the sports betting world, and like really opening it up for themselves, and just changing the game and just saturating yet another market. And since everyone has an iPhone, I bet you they would probably make some type of incentive for iPhone users, right, to use their platform. UAW reaches deal with Ford, ticker F, averting strike at Kentucky plant. Rivian, ticker RIVN, slides after posting another loss and announcing job cuts. Yeah, the Tesla killer. Reddit inks first AI content licensing contract with Google. Royal Caribbean Cruises, ticker RCL, raises annual adjusted profit guidance. Demand concerns, Sunrun shares tumble after earnings miss. Supermicro Computer, ticker SMCI, launches proposed $1.5 billion note offering. Intel unveils Microsoft partnership, new foundry system for AI. So Intel partnering up with Microsoft. We got the old and the new coming together for me and you, right, to create an AI future, for better or for worse. But that's where we're at today, guys, on this fine Friday Eve. That'll wrap us up, put a bow on it. Again, markets being the land of eternal opportunity, there will always be something to take advantage of. So make sure you have your head up, your eyes open, and your head educated, right? You want to have your brain enabled with systems that allow you to win more often than you lose, to eye and even see those opportunities. Otherwise, they will continue to pass you by, right? So you can continue trying to wade water in an era where we are drowning in information but starving for wisdom, or you could adopt that wisdom, right? Learn the actual system that allows you to apply the information and then accomplish those goals that you want to accomplish. Because information on its own is worth absolutely nothing. You got to do something with it, right? And then that's how you close the gap. So, cheers to that. By the way, I've got an appointment today at noon, so I'll probably be here first hour of the market, then on the road. So I'll see what we have, happening then. But I'll lay out a nice game plan for us today, so we can make sure that we execute, whether I'm present or not. That's the beautiful thing about being educated. You do it all on your own. So cheers to doing it on our own, but also having a community here so that we can do it together and standing on business, baby. Right? Again, this is from my friend's brand, Highly Intentional. Check her out, Deandra Sydney, on Instagram, on Facebook. Loving this hoodie. And other than that, guys, let's have a great day. Spread love. Have an amazing day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Last prep session of the week. Have a good one.